Good old boys,
I'm Mark.
Bog Beef. We have with us today Logo Daedalus. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Doing good. It's good to have you on the show, man. You're a legend. One of the most interesting guys on Twitter, author. Uh, you get a lot of very unique interactions. You know, I have this thing. I don't know if you've heard. I end up doing this thing where I'm defending Moldbug all the time. People are like, why do you read that guy?
Yeah, I mean, I do that. I have to do the same. There's like some, I don't know what to call. We're the real intellectual dark web. Is this fucking whatever? Like people calling this the post. Like everyone comes up with like new names for whatever the fuck this weird spot of the internet is, where it's like harder to categorize what people are, but there's kind of just like more of just like this network of people who are just like kind of contrarian, I suppose. It's like the real dissident space opposed from like the like more captured, specifically branded, like kind of party dogmatic ones, I would say. Because it's like I feel like I have more things in common with like Mold Bug than I do other people, even though we like also don't in most ways, and we have like very different conceptions. But we're at least like both playing the same game, I would say. Other people are playing a different game, I think.
Absolutely. I read his stuff, even if I totally disagree with it, and I'm reading that. But with you, every now and then I've gotten to be like, people will DM me something like, "Oh man, what's this guy saying?" And one thing I've done before, I said, "Okay, who do you think are the real assholes, the real pieces of shit out here on Twitter or politics or whatever?" Then be like, this guy. And then I can search your name and be like, look, here's him here's Logo sticking it to him. And I'm like, well, check this out. Yeah, you're a very calm guy, but when you go off, you go off.
Yeah, I mean, I just like don't like seeing common kind of bullshit. And often, like a lot of the times, what I'm most harsh against is probably stuff that I've done myself in the past. I think that's true of almost anyone, but you know. Like I did have a certain attraction when I was younger to the kind of like what I have been calling sentimental nihilism recently that exists like on a lot of parts of specifically I would say the right in a more conscious fashion than on the quote unquote left. But there's people who will be like, I'm a sentimental nihilist, yes, Chad, or whatever, basically, and that's sort of the shit that pisses me off the most right now.
Why don't you explain to the audience what you mean by sentimental nihilist?
Basically, I think like when I'm like basically someone who is a nihilist, right? Like a lot of people are nihilists. Like it's a pretty common position to have. That's like in the face of modernity, right? We're like, okay, so like, we return to tradition and like like God is dead, etc. All these people reading Nietzsche, so everyone's a nihilist because we're all Nietzscheans. So then it's like, well, what do you have to hold on to? And what it ultimately is like people's like sentimentality, or they have a specific like kind of aesthetic training to be like, it's like when people are like, this is what they stole from you or whatever. And it's like a picture of like Norman Rockwell type painting, or, the fasci or Soviet equivalent of like a Norman Rockwell painting.
Yeah, I've heard reactionaries. One of the hot reactionary hot takes out there is that these I can't think of the woman, but the Gamergate woman that was like, you guys are just sort of these video games are bad for you. Every now and then a reactionary will go like, yeah, she's right. You guys are just sort of jacking off into a masturbatory thing.
Yeah, I think I get a lot. I piss off the gamers a lot. That's something that I have fun doing, because I honestly do think that like gamers are some of like the little pettiest bitches on the internet, especially like hardcore gamers are like, it almost makes me feel in some way in tune with the anti-Gamergate type people, only because I also hate the gamers. Like I don't like them that much more, but like, they're such little babies and they don't care about anything. Like they are the real nihilists. Like they're like, I just want to make sure the video games are good. Like that's all I care about.
I used to play a lot of video games when I was younger, but they were in the arcade. I was a big arcade rat, and I feel like there was at least something.
They're totally different. They're totally different things,
yeah.
In my opinion. Like I'm like a huge fan of the old days of like couch multiplayer, and like I like board games. Like I like games. Like I play a lot of chess. I like playing games with my friends and things like that. But the sort of game as service lifestyle economy and like the blockbuster video game stories, like cut scenes with little set pieces. Like I just find the most of the industry like so cheap and disgusting, and like a lot of it is very predatory too. Like they're God, I know people who like work on like iPhone games and stuff, and like they're literally just like trying to hijack your like neurology. Like they have like neuroscientists in to like make things as addictive as possible. It's like extremely evil.
When I was in college, so you know there's people like Joe Rogan, big podcaster. You know, he says like, you know, he gets up in the morning, he wakes and bakes, he's at the bank, he's going to the gym, he's doing everything just ripped, right? Not everybody's built like that. I remember I got a hold of some pot in college once, and I mean it was around, but I mean like, you know, like significant amount. I was like, okay, I'm gonna get in this. So I was smoking during the day for the first time, and then like I remember like 2 weeks later, I'm like, yeah, I've kind of sort of been on this couch and sort of like up to the bathroom and the shower for like 3 weeks. I just fast forward my life like a month, and like as soon as video games got the save feature, I feel like that's the kind of vortex they can just sort of drop you in, where you just sort of like, yeah, I just want to just get past this part of my life.
Well, anything that you can construct an identity around, like there aren't many people who identify themselves primarily as sports fans. You know, because like you know, my dad,
I'm from New England, man. I don't know about that. That's like all that's left there. Is like Patriots fans, man. There's like nothing.
We're
that's
talking
like,
about people, not Patriots fans.
Dunks, Pats, and oxycodone, maybe.
What about the Alabama guy that poisoned the trees, man?
Yeah, exactly. People like that, they've always been around. So when you're constructing an identity out of something like this, it's always bad news. But yeah, comparing it to like drugs, like, the hardcore. I remember back when Saturday Night Live was like actually a good show in the '90s. They had that recurring sketch with the big fat Chicago guys who just did nothing but lived and breathed Chicago sports. Like we've always made fun of people like that, but now because of the internet, everything's in your face constantly. So whenever someone chooses to identify their lives with, including politics or philosophy, that happens a lot as well.
I saw on the TL today people were saying, don't turn on your Xbox. The new Xboxes that are coming out will fucking blow up and kill you.
Yeah. Apparently they catch it on fire. The little Twitter news thing showed a picture of an Xbox smoking.
Man, the console market is like the biggest fucking grift in the world. Like it's actually incredible to me that they can just keep cranking out these new generations of consoles and like nothing fundamentally changes. Like I remember, I don't know, I guess I'm old now, but like there used to be like a substantial change between consoles. Mm-hmm. And it'd be like, oh, like this is like meaningful. But I would say that probably stopped at the like Xbox, PS3 generation, and like since then we've been kind of in like suspended animation. Like there hasn't really been that much innovation in video games like at all.
I know with PC chips, like, I don't know if anybody remembers that the 2500K Intel chip. I mean, it's probably two people out there know it. Like after that, like things haven't really got faster in like 15 years. They just throw more cores and shit on there, but it's all the same thing.
Yeah, Moore's law or whatever was bullshit. It's like Whig history. It's not a thing. The rate has definitely slowed down.
So now you have another book coming out this weekend.
Yeah. It's a poetry collection of stuff I've been writing for like almost 10 years, I guess. I don't know what the oldest thing in there is probably like from like 9 years old at this point, from a long time ago. But I've just been trying to like, a lot of, it's like what people asked for when I polled. A lot of people like my poems. Not a lot of people really write poetry anymore, especially in like traditional forms, I guess. And I don't know. I'd like to think I put my own spin on it. Hopefully it justifies itself. But people have been liking it so far, so it'll be out. And it's going to be better designed and stuff than the last one. It's more of a professional looking thing. They'll get better here on out.
So the name is Ampersand.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're recording this before. Hopefully we'll have a link by the time it goes up, or maybe soon after. But
otherwise it'll be probably pinned on my Twitter account, which is logo_Daedalus. But I would assume people know that. I don't know. That's probably easy stuff. I don't know how much our audiences overlap. I feel like there's probably some substantial overlap. There has been for a while. I've been meaning to come on your show for a long time.
Oh yeah, for sure. There was like the first like I don't know, the first 6 months we didn't like have guests or ever guests on these shows. We were like, what is a podcast? Like, how do you do this shit?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the I was thinking about, so this is one of these things that comes up because poetry comes up like once every while, it sort of reintroduces so just speaking for myself, an idiot, every now and then poetry will come up, someone I'm interested in writes poetry and I'm like, oh wait a minute, poetry, what is this again? I've heard someone there was twice in my, so I know someone that's into that curated art before an art gallery. And there's this huge mystique around modern art. And one time I asked them, I was like, what is this? How do you? And they were like, well, it's just a running inside joke. That's all it is. And I was like, oh, okay.
That's more true than not. But it's like the question is, right? Well, it's like who's the joke on, right? At a certain point, it's like who's laughing, and at a certain point, it was just like it's just mystification for capital at this point, right? Absolutely, what you're saying, money laundering and stuff. Like a big thing that's been happening during COVID. This is so fucked. Some of the tankies have been covering this, which is surprising. Is a lot of museums selling off a lot of their older art and holding on to a lot of this kind of garbage that they bought in the interim period, like a lot of contemporary stuff. Like that's not the stuff they're selling off. They're selling off like Victorian portraits and like kind of older art that is like definitely more substantial and is definitely going to be worth more still in the future than all this fucking crap that's being made now. So it's like you can see billionaires basically like taking some trash and like swapping it out with like a gem. It's like a heist, like really in a lot of senses.
Yeah, the banana taped to the wall and all this bullshit. I saw you wrote a bunch of interesting things about about sort of when modern art was getting started, whatever the trickster guy that I don't want
Duchamp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Duchamp was a chess player first more than an artist. That's how he considered himself. Like he was obsessed with chess, and he was like a really good chess player. And so if you think about his urinal as a chess move, it makes a lot more sense. Because basically there was this art exhibit that was like, if you pay, we'll exhibit anything that you'll put on there, right? And so he paid to exhibit this urinal, and he signed it with a name that wasn't his. Like no one was ever supposed to find out that like he had done it, right? He was mostly just making fun of like what had happened, like that museums were now basically like you pay to display your stuff, and that's how it becomes art, is that you just pay this fee and now it's art because it's being displayed there. But then like people like you do this to it broke people's minds though, really, because they're like, well, is this art? Like could this be art? And it's like absolute madness comes after there. No one ever, but like, and like he kind of took advantage of that too, right? So he's like riding that, being like, yeah, no, like I'm actually a genius. But like he was a chess player. Like this is the real art. This is like the meta art on top of it is like just masterful grifting.
So like he thought in the back of his mind, like, you mean people are just like paying money to drop their shit off in here? And then that's sorry, go ahead, Bear.
I was just looking this up. It was sold for $1.7 million in 2000. A version of the urinal.
That's a version he made. No, but after he did this once. Museums were paying him to make more of them.
Yeah, just get a factory churning them out.
No, but there is a factory churning them out. He just took things that were made in a factory and then signed a fake name to it, and then it became art. Like that's some top tier grifting, my friend. Like
you cannot like or respect things like philosophy, but like once things like this sort of enters the picture, like. You need some bigger answers. You know what I'm saying?
Well, people were. I mean, this is as old as philosophy. If you become so obsessed that can just up your ass so far that you well, actually, if you think about it, then anything can be true. Then yes, a toilet can be art. Yeah.
What I was getting to so I heard that explanation for modern art, and then like because before you hear that, it just seems that this very uncomfortable thing that like this very elite thing is supposed to, right? It's kind of part of it. And then I heard, so it was like, I was like, poetry, what is this? How does this work? And they're like, well, you just a big part of it, you just it was versed in the opposite of how I thought it was. So I thought it was this. That's what they said was, you're cutting to the chase. You want to find the juicy thing that hits, and you're just looking for those. And what would you say that something like that? Is it like an extreme steroid up version of fiction, or of literature, or what would you think?
I mean, I think that everyone likes poetry. I don't think anyone dislikes it. I think it's like a human universal that everyone enjoys poetry. It just happens to be in America that our poetic form is like the lyrics, particularly, and in recorded music, like kind of took the place of poetry after poetry had gone from kind of oral recitations to a print-based medium. It just didn't really have anywhere to go, which is why you have spoken word, quote unquote, is kind of the popular poetic form now. You have those slam poet convention things, but that's effectively like the same thing as an improv group compared to the tradition of stand-up comedy going back to Mark Twain, basically, where it counts, but it's kind of lost the point of it. I think that a lot of what poetry for the page, written poetry, the difference is in the formalism, the kind of rigorous use of meter and language and things like that. Just it's more like puzzles to me, or geometric proofs, which is how Dante describes it in La Vita Nuova. So you are trying to kind of express as much information as possible in a kind of rigorous and short form, but also in a way that where it sticks to your mind. It's supposed to be memorable. You're supposed to memorize poetry, or at least be able to certain lines will come to mind, which is why people are constantly quoting poets all the time. Poets are the inventors of language in the first place. They make up words.
Well, I mean, poetry is, depending on how you want to define media, it was the original form of media before there was pretty much anything else, right? Would be
that's what Haman says. Yeah. He says poetry is the mother tongue of the human race, because it's what is there's a lot of questions about the origins of language. An interesting case is that it comes from copying bird sounds, and that sort of hunter's instinct, that sort of thing, which I find very intriguing. I don't know. I like Nabokov enough, and he had a very interesting idea about the driver of evolution being deception and camouflage, these sorts of things. He was obsessed with butterflies and animal camouflage and, people copying each other and things like that. Imitation, mimetics.
Yeah. Whenever you see you ever see these animals where, there's one animal that has some crazy, insane poison, and then there's another animal. It's well, I'll just look just like you.
Yeah,
just copy your rattler.
Yeah, that's sort of what the left is online.
Yeah. One of the there's a lot of this is one of these things that there's a lot of romanticism, especially online, especially of it seems like you're not really being romantic, nostalgic, unless you go back before World War One, and it seems like in the I'm not this is not my time period, but I've read Zizek talk about this a little bit, and I see little nuggets here where it's every other war that happened from the 16th to the 19th century, but it's this fucking poet just started writing some wild shit, and people went nuts. You could start a civil war with some hot poetry.
Oh, absolutely. That's absolutely the case. For sure.
Didn't that literally happen with Athens and Persia?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say even to a certain degree, one of the premier poets today is obviously fucking Donald Trump. That's actually more why if he makes that, he's changed the way people speak entirely. He has his own lexicon.
Yeah, not just he has a very strange way of speaking where he puts emphasis. He puts emphasis in very strange places. He likes to really end his sentence with some punchy remark, even if it doesn't make sense when you read it on paper. It just it's how sometimes epic poetry didn't look as good written down.
Yeah, I mean he actually does write in the epic form, I would say, because he always has the kind of nickname or the epithet for various people, right? Like, he's like writing his own little Iliad and he's like Sleepy Joe, and like all of these figures. Same thing with like Alex Jones. Like a lot of this is just like in the kind of heroic or like epic myth form, just like politics discussed in that sort of fashion. It's usually like that's how I see it anyway. Like it effectively functions the same way. That's how like William Blake is like very much against like Homer and like the classics, because he considered them to be like the party of war, right? Like if you get really into Homer and stuff like that, then you're like, oh, like we need to have war, or like the poets of empire like Virgil and stuff. Whereas he was more interested in like the poetry of like revelation, which is like fundamentally kind of at odds with politics, I think.
I think it's no doubt if you get enough Homer around, or however it's transcribed into the whatever context you're in, around enough males 18 to 24, some shit can go down.
For sure. I mean, that's sort of why Plato's actually like people are like, oh, Plato was against the poets, like he exiled the poets. Like no, he exiled the classic poets and like the tragedians. Like his notion of the noble lie was one that was closer to what I would say is probably like a Soviet realist book or like a John Steinbeck novel than it is to a kind of warrior spirit. More, it's like a very civic ethic or whatever. It's like Aaron Sorkin type shit.
Red pill is on Soviet realism. I don't have a clue what it is. I think this is that from my stumbling around the dark is that this is that form of at least the art, the visual art is the stuff that like the stuff from the Soviet Union where people Westerners were like, oh, look at that. That is something.
I mean, so there was a big change in the Soviet Union from the beginning. Like the original like avant-garde was very much allied with the Soviet project, and these are like Malevich and like the Cosmos, and like these are like kind of like the futurists. This is like what futurism turned into when it went into Russia, where it usually took on a more like fascist form. It was more of like a revolutionary communist form in the Soviet Union, in Russia anyway. But then as they went forward, they found that like this wasn't that effective at like rallying the masses, and it was also it didn't help with their orthodoxy, because they didn't really like believe in anything. Like they were writing wild crazy shit, like fucking Fedorov is writing about how they needed to learn how to resurrect everyone who had ever lived and like make the kingdom of God on earth and then expand out into space and like conquer the universe like and stuff. And that kind of fit into the earlier parts of the Soviet dream. But then as they had to like turn from this sort of revolutionary force to a force that was building
healthcare, please.
Yeah, exactly. That's when they made a big shift to socialist realism, which is a lot closer to, I mean, we have socialist realists, like it's like a major form. It's like the 19th century bourgeois novel of like realism, like social realism, trying to depict like the various classes in society, like Balzac and things like that. But also tied to a progressive moral force, right? So I would say, like, if you want American socialist realism, you read a ton of it in high school. That's like most of what you're assigned. It's like John Steinbeck, it's like George Orwell type stuff. That's all. They're all like writing in the same genre as the propagandists for the Soviet Union were writing when they were writing novels.
I don't want to let it escape. I wanted to comment on it. Luxury space communism actually predates man going into space?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. For sure.
I wanted to be clear about that.
Well, I mean, you could say that luxury space communism is just like heaven, right? It's just right? Like, that's the big shift in modernity, is like, this is what I would consider like the second religiousness, is where you have all of these former religious notions, but then they're just applied materially. It's kind of going backwards from the abstraction of it at like the peak of like Western theology and stuff. It becomes extremely, extremely abstracted, but then it comes back down to like, no, we have to build heaven on earth now, right?
Yeah, that Yarvin term, I don't like it for obvious reasons. We call it applied Christianity, right?
I mean, that's
It's a good word.
That's what people have been saying for forever. Like that's what Max Stirner, right? He talks at like all the post-Hegelians. They were just talking about how like socialism was just like secularized Protestantism, which is like so like I think that's pretty true. Like we have our own form of American socialism. It's like how would I put it? Even the Republicans, even the conservatives are fundamentally like their mythology is based off of kind of like the WPA and like the FDR regime. Still, there's not really that many like anti-FDR Republicans, and if they are, they're usually kind of wonkish libertarian types. But like their sense of personal aesthetics, like even if they like Ayn Rand novels or something, Ayn Rand is writing fucking like capitalist realism, socialist realism. In America, is just saying that like you need to have like the strong industrialist as opposed to the super buff prole. Like she replaces the technologist characters that exist in all the Soviet realist novels, who are kind of like suspicious, potentially parasitical creatures. They become the strong proletarian like overman that exists in all the Soviet realist novels, where it's all about just like buff dudes like in factories being badass and like telling women to shut up. That's what most of these books are like, by the way.
Yeah, imagine like a Jacob Rees-Mogg in America. Like that's, you know what I mean?
That's Jared Taylor.
Yeah.
Oh.
What are you talking about? That's exactly what he is.
It like to me like whenever I see that guy, it's I am super American. Like it's like it's like with Jared Taylor, it's like a Japanese guy. It's like, well, where does this come from? This is a very peculiar thing. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
he's just like hardcore Anglo. Like he's Anglo as fuck. Like he is old ass Anglo, and like being obsessed with Japan is extremely old ass Anglo. Like Japanophilia in England has been around forever.
It's a place that the Anglo hasn't. It's the only place Anglo hasn't trashed yet. So
I'm sorry, I gotta do this again because I want to swish this around like wine in a glass. So you're saying that like Ayn Rand, the John Galt character, is like the American libertarian version of like the buff pro with the spanner.
Yes, absolutely. Like we still have this idea, right? Everyone loves like Elon Musk. Like Elon Musk is like people's notion of the proletariat, essentially.
Yeah,
because he's building the future. He's building the revolutionary future.
You don't see what's the guy's name? The Rand guy, the everyman character name.
What do you mean?
John Galt. You don't see John Galt playing croquet in the Hamptons, right? You know what I'm saying? There's like no aristocraticness to this John Galt character.
Well, it's the aristocratic nature of like it's like commercial aristocracy, right? Where it's like we don't have a lot of the old forms of aristocracy. Our aristocracy is like aristocrats are like respect people who know about the stock market. That's not really like how the aristocracy works in other places, where it's about like your culturedness or whatever.
It wasn't how it worked here either until a certain president.
This is one of the things I've always wanted to ask you. Is it so? I see all the time. People on. I don't really have much contact with like PMC world, upper class world, but I hear them every now and they often complain. They're like every now and then you'll get them complaining about wasps, right? And they'll complain about wasps. Like, and I'm just sitting there thinking like, is there a wasp in office anymore?
They're dead. I'll tell you how I know
gone.
they're dead. Want to know? This is something that no one knows, but it's a very telling feature. But the song for Harvard.
No.
The Harvard song.
No,
Okay.
not familiar with it. Surprisingly.
The final refrain is until the stock of the Puritans die, right? That's and they replaced that like 3 years ago. It's gone. Not the song anymore. It's till the stars in the firmament die. So
they
they
sailed back to Rivendell or whatever.
Yeah, no, they're gone. They're gone.
We got to get Thought and Mather to comment on this.
thought I had found. I remember like a month ago. I thought I was, you ever get in these sort of these wiki holes and you're just sort of looking at, and I just there was some random. Oh, and by the way, when I went into this, the first thing I thought was, who the hell's in charge of Abercrombie and Finch right now? I immediately I went and looked it up, and it was a Jewish person. I was like, well, see,
they just
they've got it all.
wasps. Like they're the ones holding up the wasp. Like if you think about it, it's like they fought hard to get into those country clubs, right? And now they're that's just their country club because like there's no wasps left. Like they still exist, but they don't have any cultural power. Like they don't like even their institutions. Like they're not like preferential towards themselves. If anything, that's the exact opposite.
Yeah, I found one. I remember I looked it up. It was some finance guy, and it wasn't sure. You couldn't really tell. They had decent bona fides, but in general, like they're gone. As much as anyone, any ethnicity, any race of people has ever been raptured away.
That's why I love Gilmore Girls. So I always say Gilmore Girls is about the decline of the wasps because it's about like I don't know if you know the plot line, but it's about like the daughter of like wasp blue blood Connecticut family. Like the father is like the what does he do? I think he's like an insurance executive, and his wife just goes to like Daughters of the American Revolution meetings all the time, like all these like social like high society type stuff. She has a kid and like abandons their world to like become petite bourgeois and like own a hotel, a bed and breakfast basically. And then she has a daughter, is like single mom, and her daughter wants to basically enter the Anglo-Wasp society. So they like reconcile the family. She goes to like a fancy prep school, then she goes to Yale, and it ends with her joining the covering the Obama administration in 2008 as a journalist. Yeah, which is pretty perfect. Yeah, it's like that's pretty much what happened.
I saw one of Obama's top staffers. She was listed as a one of the like the care somebody high up on I don't know what they call it. Somebody high up on the like one of these caretakers of one of these uber wasp like the OG churches and stuff. You could tell it was like the Obama campaign tried to fill out all these little bubbles of these old authority whatever. The thing that always bothered me is why do these people still act like there's people that still talk like the Abercrombie and Fitch look was like always been the look, will always be the look, and that's what every bully that ever has been looks like. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, it's kind of like those forms still sort of exist. Like you can still like if you go to like even like fraternities in general are kind of like LARPing waspishness, right? With like their style, and at least most fraternities, even like Southern fraternities, in my opinion, they're all wearing boat shoes and like khaki shorts down here. Sometimes I'm walking around, like I see like Texas A&M kids and I'm like, is this fucking Cape Cod? Like
I was one. Yeah, this is all true. Yeah.
But I think it's just like the forms still exist, like the kind of clubs and, just like playing golf. Like who the fuck plays golf but wasps, right? Like that's like the waspiest thing in the world is like yachting and golfing.
Yeah, well, the only things more that you have to be a true now these things have been gamed by other people. I guess they were backdoors into these big schools. Basically, these things like rowing, lacrosse, rowing is. I told a story a while on this show before, and the story was about a rowing team, but I switched it to swimming because the school in question was an elite school, and I knew most people's experience the rowing team at their school is just like a pothead club. But in this case, it was an elite school where the rowing team is These guys were all jacked and swole. These were people who really wanted to be there. But I knew people wouldn't know that, so I just said it was a swimming team, because that shit is serious there.
That's their football team, yeah.
It's real serious. I mean, I miss the rowing machines, man. Those used to be like standard up in the gyms where I'm from. I would still love doing those. I would listen to like fucking like Volga Boatman music and just row and like awaken something in my fucking pirate Irish ancestor blood or something. Just rowing. But yeah, that's like all that stuff like still exists. But you look at like the composition of the teams or whatever. It's not like it's all wasps.
Right.
Like,
Okay, before we lost Bug Beef, I wanted to ask it. So, okay, the wasps are dead. Used to confirmed by the hit.
they turned into pure form. I would say that they apotheosized into
Yeah, they
like
ascended.
they ascended into just pure form.
Pure energy. Yeah. So, okay, the Puritans didn't necessarily found America, but after the Civil War, the Puritan America became the ruling America. Can we all agree on that?
Yeah, I don't even know if I would go with Puritan though. I'm like, this is one thing I push on Moldbug on is like the difference between the Unitarians and like his like Calvinists, because like the people that he mostly talks about, like these Calvinists, these are the people who like kept moving. Like
I pressed him on this a little bit.
Yeah, these are the people who kept moving. Like the Unitarians are the ones who stayed in place. Like they were the real commercial elite, but the Calvinist ones, those were the ones who were like out in the frontier. So this is like if you're looking for like the real origin of like moving crypto Calvinism or whatever, you go to like Mormons, because that's where they all came from, is fucking Vermont. You know, like that's where Joseph Smith's from, and then he kept moving over, and they kept going west and west and west and west until they got all the way over there.
Well, I was going to ask you, what did we replace the wasps with?
Right now, it's so they're relaunching Gossip Girl, but with like a multi-ethnic cast, and that's what we replace the wasps with. It's the same form. It's the same form, except there's new representation.
So like that's importing elites from other cultures and like this is a kind of a joke on Twitter about the high caste like Brahmin Indian immigrants who immediately fall into the same role that you would have in Indian society.
Yeah, that's what it is. We imported a whole like the wasps didn't have enough kids, so we've imported. It's like Brangelina, like the adopting African children or whatever.
I wonder if this is a cyclical thing, because this is one of these things. This thing Osama bin Laden's got like 100 brothers and sisters. They had like a payout that went, so if you were part of the royal family, you got like a stipend. And then the government was like, okay, so everyone was like, if I have 1 million kids, then I have this, I have like a patronage army, automatically. Everyone did that. So the government was like, okay, you guys got to knock this off. We're not doing this anymore. And now they don't have any kids anymore. Because now it's like, oh, you want to put everything into one kid to succeed. I wonder if all this kind of shit is cyclical.
Yeah, but then you look like where are the real wasps that are breeding like rabbits still? I mean, it's fucking the Mormons, man. Like if you want to look, like if we're talking about the real continuation of this, like, and like that sort of idea of America into the future, like it's the Mormons 100%, which is, I'm like fucking obsessed with Mormonism. I'm like super fascinated by it, but at the same time, they all kind of fucking freak me out at a certain point. They're all very nice until you start like asking a lot of questions. And you're like trying to like figure out what they actually mean. Like they get really flighty. They kind of like it's very odd.
They are super American. And if you like were to chart a map from like wasps to, and then you like if you put in the middle of the map Alex Jones, you go straight to Mormons. Look, it's like they were planning.
Alex Jones is a Mormon. Like his cosmology that he that he like talks about is the Mormon cosmology. Like the Constitution is a holy document literally granted by God to man in Mormonism, and that's what he believes. And like no one else does, really.
I feel like being the only church to be like we should buy up Hawaii was like the only church that understands America. To me, that just seems to be a very
allegedly there's
buying
a lot
Las
of
Vegas.
Yes, that too.
Well, in intelligence services, allegedly, I keep seeing people claim that like
they have a clique inside the
no, because they're super big because they all do mission trips, and so they usually have like multiple languages, and they like don't do drugs, so they're like. They line up at BYU for like CIA, FBI recruitment, for sure. Not for the higher level shit. No, they don't care. Like they're just those are like the Mormons don't have like a lot of power. They kind of staff things. They're good at following orders, but you can never put a Mormon undercover.
They're like
that's
straight.
Why
they're like straight homosexuals.
Yeah, basically. No, but that's actually how they put it before, in ways, because that's one of the reasons why they didn't want to hire like homosexuals to do like operations and stuff, is because they wouldn't be able to like perform certain actions basically. And that's the same thing with like Mormons. You can't put a Mormon undercover to like bust a drug ring, or like to you can't have them doing Epstein type tricks. So they're very good at following orders.
Al-Qaeda's got a gun to his head. Drink this cup of coffee.
Yeah. Man, they have great like little loopholes in Mormonism. For instance, you're not allowed to drink coffee or tea, but you can drink energy drinks so long as you like don't ask too many questions about it, or you don't like make it ostentatious. It's very, very odd stuff.
There's this map that Bog Beef and I love to post on Twitter, and it's like 200 years from now, assuming demographic trends continue. It's like everything west of the Mississippi is Mormon, everything east of the Mississippi is Mennonite and Amish.
That would be like that's like wishful thinking. Wouldn't
it be wonderful?
Wouldn't that be great? I mean, that would be kind of nice. It'd be kind of cozy. I mean, I think the gas stations would have really good snacks. So that's what I know. You go through those areas, boy, those gas stations are great.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw that the I guess the election got really tight. Everybody sort of calling in votes where they could, and the Republicans were like they
bring in the Amish.
They got the Amish were like, we're going to let the women vote this time, and I was like, this ain't worth it, man.
Oh, no. Oh my God,
we have committed a grave sin here.
Wow, that's the real Antichrist moment. If Trump got the Amish to let women vote, that's pretty fucked up.
Damn, my boy.
Now he's gonna build the third temple in Israel too, and damn. Yeah. There's nothing holy anymore.
If you're woke on that, you want every now and then I'll throw up an RT of like when they think they got they found a new red heifer somewhere. I miss that whole mythology is not really.
It's just QAnon. It's QAnon now, man. It's QAnon, baby. Yeah. That's the interesting thing about QAnon is that they've kind of flipped from being like Trump is like holding back the Antichrist to being like Trump is the return of Jesus. There's like a big theological shift in their cosmology, in like the kind of conspiracy theory cosmology, I guess, around esoteric Trumpism.
I feel like if people want to be disenchanted, like if Q got way less interesting to me, like the last time I went to a Chick-fil-A. Like it just felt like this is like because by the way, everybody there has like Q stickers and all their shit, and like they're all like in on the school. You're a guy who obviously understands and a little bit of mysticism, a little bit of that kind of stuff. There, it's all that. There's and I use this phrase all the time because it means such bull. This means like bad news is saying trust the plan basically means like, yeah, I know this is bad news, but it's actually good news, and I have nothing to show for it, but trust the plan.
Yeah, I mean, like what's interesting is the kind of synchronism we're seeing between evangelical Christianity and the kind of like astrology, like new Aquarian movement type shit, which is like something that also has happened. Like that's why I've been obsessed with Falun Gong recently. Because like the QAnon Falun Gong like overlap is pretty large. Like if you look at like the Epic Times and a lot of the things that are publishing a lot of the like more Q oriented stuff, which was literally like another one of these cults that is tied. It's like kind of Christian inspired in its structures, but is very like woohoo mystical Scientology in its practices. The same thing is like true of like the QAnon people. They have a very like they'll talk to you about like your pineal gland and like stuff that you would only see in like 1990s, 1980s like conspiracy theory, like parody religion stuff. But now it's like JK, but for real. It's like it's like Discordianism, like the Discordian church like has become like a real entity. And it's like QAnon. And like a lot of the same people are kind of involved in some ways.
You don't even get a narrative. Like Alex Jones' most wildest stuff at least gives you a narrative of like, these are this is like, here's some fucking numbers. Trust the plan. This whole thing, to me, it feels like there's a direct line from prosperity theology comes in.
Mm-hmm.
You mix in a handful of very charismatic preachers. The Protestant religion is basically scattered to the winds, and all that is just waiting for any of these things it's just all there, waiting to be fucked with.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is like Trump could start a church. That's one of the interesting things about him as a political figure. There's not many. I don't think Obama could have started a church. He could have started. He started a media outlet for sure. I think Trump could do either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Trump couldn't start a KGB. Obama could.
Yeah, that's definitely true. He's not that kind of operator, but that's why people, I guess, like thought of him as like a Hitler parallel, because like Hitler had the similar like kind of religious fervor to him, but they're very much different in almost every other way. Like, that's one of the most absurd things, is thinking that he's like a Hitlerian figure, in my opinion. He's more like he's just like, he's a huckster. That's another thing I think a lot of like the people who like Trump and are trusting the plan don't understand, is how much like he is like a Barnum and Bailey kind of guy. Like,
what do you mean they don't?
What do you mean? No, he's not just a showman. No, everything he says is literally 100% accurate.
How could anyone not know that is his entire persona? That he's like, I'm going to make the best deals. I got a big gold hotel. Like, of course, everyone.
I think that could happen. One thing that can, you got to understand. So I just came back from the Deep South, and and you see love for Trump that I've never seen the rest of my life. I showed you. There's the Trump store. I never saw any. I've never seen so much. Almost desperate support. And it's like, we've never been. If no one's ever talked to you from that stance before, then you're going to be very, it's the cute girl comes to talk to you. The president is like, hey, you asshole. I'm thinking about you. That can be very exciting.
Well, yeah, because it is desperate, because they know that whatever comes after him is going to be overtly telling you that you're going to eat shit.
Yeah, I mean, they're basically choosing like a lot of like they're like, this is the fuck thing, is like Americans are in such a desperate place at this point. Like the particular types that you're talking about, especially like in the more like not like cosmopolitan urban centers, but like pretty much everywhere else, it's gotten so bad that like if they're not turning to Trump, like a year prior, they might have been like calling a healing line or something, or doing like Reiki or any of these sorts of things, because people are just like desperate and they'll grab out for whatever they think will like help them, and is like not like condemning them. Like, that's, oh god, it pisses me off so much, man, because I'm from like the same, like I'm not from the Deep South, but I might as well be in other ways, because like where I grew up, like everyone is like, people identified with as like Southerners for some reason, even though we're like up in Massachusetts, like people had Confederate flags, and like they would drive like go mudding and stuff, and like everyone was really into hunting, because it's like like a very rural area, I grew up like by farms,
Australia and Canada and stuff as well.
Yeah, so it's like these are like my sorts of people, and it's like opiate epidemic up there, because it's like not only is it like the problems of like rural America, but it's also the problems of like Rust Belt America, because like the first places that got deindustrialized were where the Industrial Revolution like started, which is like in parts of like Massachusetts and like on like the Connecticut River and things like that. And all of this has been hollowed out and replaced with like the insurance and like kind of intelligence economy, what they call the knowledge corridor up there, and pretty much everything else has been like wiped. So it's just like people are fucking, they've got no one to talk to, like no one's like speaking on their issues. They don't identify the way that they're supposed to with like the people around them. They're supposed to be, like progressives or whatever. Like, it's interesting. There's a very different timeline. As someone said this, like there's like timeline where Ivanka marries Tom Brady would have been a very different timeline, baby. Let me tell you, because New England would have been really ready to flip over in that direction, I think, if that had happened, because he's really the king of New England.
He should be.
He is. He's more like it's the only thing holding it all together, man. It's like that's why when we were talking about sports earlier, that's literally like no one's religious in the Northeast. Like it's very rare, and if people are, it's like not in the same way they are in other places because it's not a norm. Like it's not like everyone is going to church or everyone's going to the same church or like, there's like a kind of subcategory thing that's like a little extra thing about you. It's not like a central part of your public identity, but sports way more so. Absolutely more so. Like the Red Sox growing up was like a religion to me, more than going to church was.
The mid '80s Celtics are to me, is the most transcendent team, and the mid '80s Celtics is to me the biggest team in basketball, most interesting that there's ever been. The A7 finals is just fucking amazing. They turn off the air conditioner to try to give Luis Alcindor a stroke, and in the Garden is. I never told people how to vote. I tell people vote for whoever you think is going to help you, which is usually for most people it's not. For a few people it are. I've met people. They said at their work, they had worked at a place that worked heavy on they got all their money from grants and stuff, and they said when Trump got elected, they were like. Go ahead and take the week off to mourn because we're gonna be losing tons of money. If you're like that and you're listening to the show, you should fucking vote for whoever's gonna keep you employed.
Yeah, that's actually like the smartest fucking thing you could be doing is just voting based solely off of interests like that. Like the rest of it's fucking bullshit.
Yeah, most of the time, because this is the thing that most people, when you're like 18, you're like, well, these parties are exactly the same. In my opinion, it's like, yeah, well to you because you're nobody, and that's how it's probably going to be for most people. People want to talk about this escalating thing. I've been sort of comparing it to Caesar because I love the story of Caesar more than anything in the world. This is the closest I'm going to get to compare it to anything. But I'm not going to cover my ass. I'm going to say I do think things could spiral out of control, even though everyone has plans for this to be a psyop. What do you think?
I'm like people are mad at me because I have like an opinion which no one wants to agree with, because it's not inspiring to anyone, but it's like the worst case scenario, which is what I think we're in. But it's mostly that Trump doesn't have any like institutional support at all. Like he has a certain amount of leverage insofar as like he could literally break the party in half, which he might do. But I don't think you can break the party in half and simultaneously pull off what would be effectively a coup. Like people aren't saying that it's a coup who are supporting the idea of like, counting all the legal votes, blah, 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 however they want to put it. But effectively how it would function in like the world consciousness is as a coup. And I don't think that he could pull it off with that while also splitting his party in half, because I don't think his party wants him around at all. So I think that like if anyone actually rigged this, I don't even believe that the Democrats would have rigged it. I think that fucking you have like Republican operators on the inside who are planning on coming out and talking about what great patriots they are in the future for having done so.
Okay. You said one of the smartest things I've heard about this so far. You said, and you were the first person I heard say it, you said Trump TV.
Oh, that's definitely happening. That's not even a question. For sure. Like 100%. If he can get Tucker Carlson to quit his Fox contract, that'll be one thing. If not, it'll be something else. But that would be like the case where like we're going in like a lot of the right-wing populist people or whatever they call themselves are kind of getting blackpilled right now. But I think a Trump victory would be far worse for their long-term prospects in the political future.
Man, how many times do we hear this? And speaking as someone who was far more left wing politically, 5-10 years ago. I heard this same shit a lot, and it feels to me like as the kids say, cope. It's like, well, actually, the worst thing that could happen to us would be to have political victory.
Well, but it's in this particular circumstance. I'm not saying in any circumstance, but in this particular circumstance, like we haven't even hit the actual like backlash from the COVID economy. Like we effectively like had a crash. Like a huge crash, and then we like put everything in suspended animation, right. And nothing has like reflected that yet. But as that flip is good, that switch is like what's holding that back is going to be gone in the next administration, and whoever is going to be there is going to own that as like a problem. And it's much better for Joe Biden to own that as a problem and blame everything on Trump or whatever. And then, like, it's not going to look good for him.
I can see this. The main
FDR
thing,
had that, and how did that work out?
so okay, here's what I'd say this. Okay, let's say Trump uses now. Okay, if he was really going to do this, like he probably should like start a while. You would need like all these random congressmen and stuff being like shit. Well, if I don't stick by this guy, I'm going to get voted out, right? That's what you would need.
Yeah.
Yeah, en masse. And let's say, and Trump would be standing on their neck. He's gonna push his chips into staying off for 4 more years. Would that? We'll just say this: would he be doing that to be like, okay, we're term 2, we're gonna proceed with Operation MAGA, or is this, oh, thank God we stopped these guys from opening the borders for 4 years? Because the defensive, if he pushes his chips in for a defensive victory, I don't know if that's worth it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't like think that he has much to gain from it. I think there's much more to gain. Like, in the long term, I don't think like his project was ever going to be one that he was going to finish or whatever. Like, I think he's not the guy. I just don't.
Doesn't need to be, by the way. I mean, like, if Genghis Khan's son shouldn't have been Genghis Khan, Julius Caesar's son should not be like, the guy who consolidates the gangs at the crazy aggressive asshole usually is a much calmer guy,
Yeah, exactly. I just also see like, the real problem is like Joe Biden is effectively like a member of the GOP, right?
Yeah.
Like he's like the average GOP like person in the in the actual workings of government, like living in DC, etc., feels much closer to Joe Biden on almost every issue, especially if they're a Republican, than they do towards Trump. Like Trump, it always has like a proviso of like, but X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, I mean, when Trump ran, he had just split from being Democrat. He said, "If you guys dig me over, I'll run as an independent."
And by the way, he can do that again.
Yeah,
I think he could. That would be like, that's what I'm saying. I think that the reason why I liked him is because I think the GOP is like one of the worst, like is like fucking horrible, but it's also weak enough to like destroy and replace with something else. I don't think that's the case with the Democrats. I think they're extremely robust. Like they're not going to change anytime soon.
If the goal is to dismantle and replace the Republican Party, then obviously the solution, the way to make that happen is not, well, we're going to make the renegade candidate lose. We're going to replace him with a kind of a centerline guy who's going to start the imperial machine back up. He's going to open the borders back up. And, I don't see how that in the long run could. I'm not saying that won't happen, because if you're putting down like money on the logical thing that's going to happen, it's that Joe Biden's going to be president. Like I don't see how that's anyway a better outcome for right wing populists.
I would say it's like you have to think like, I'm not saying it's going to be good in like the short term, and there's obviously a lot of contingencies where like, I don't really believe a lot of the kind of strong conspiracy theorizing where it's like, well, if we don't win this election, then we'll never win another election like ever again. And I don't really believe that stuff.
That could be true of right wing populists, though. The Republican Party, that won't be true, obviously, but they did. We could go our entire lives without someone even as populist as Trump, which is like. I know everyone listening is like, well, he didn't really do any stuff. Yeah, I get that, but like this literally might be. You might not get anybody better than this in
possible.
The next 20 years.
It's definitely possible, but it doesn't seem to me that the old line GOP ideology will exist in 20 years. But I do think like something closer to that kind of American national conservatism will be more viable. It's actually more of a. Like, that's one of the funny things, right? Like, you see Trump's kind of collective appeal happening here. He kind of he could have probably done even better on that front in other ways. But I think the conservative nationalism, like civic nationalism or whatever, like as much as the white nationalists used to like to counter signal that or whatever, is a much more effective organizing for an ideology than like something like what they're pushing.
Well, yeah,
so
of course they hated it.
Yeah, I would
of
see
course.
I could see like I think that there's more of a chance for right wing populism than there is for left wing populism.
No, absolutely.
So
For
like
sure.
so like that's what I'm saying. Like I think that the chances that you'll have candidates closer to Trump in the future is much higher than you'll have a candidate closer to Bernie Sanders who didn't even get his candidacy, right? So it's like
So Huey Long torpedoed. So when he lost the primary, right, he tried to torpedo his party's chance because the other candidate looked like to be a horrible asshole, and he was going to sit there for 4 years while this guy was fucking up, and he's building out his Team MAGA coalition within the party. You know what I mean? If you had 4 years of Joe Biden fucking up, if you
with
had,
a Trump TV with a lot better coordination, and attempts to primary people and stuff in the
is
midterms.
this congressman, is he on the team or is he not?
Like this might actually be the position in which Trump is actually capable of pulling off a purge, is as like an Avignon presidency, or like as like the shadow president. He might actually be more capable of purging the GOP than he was capable of doing so like in power.
We say it all the time on this show. Look up any person who's ever successfully done a purge. They die in office. They all die in office.
Absolutely. And this would actually be a better like litmus case or whatever. If you want to really trust the plan, like I can come up with a better QAnon than whatever the QAnon take will be out of this. But if you really want to trust the plan is that Trump wanted to lose so that he can go rogue and purge the GOP and then come back and win in 2024.
Do you think there's a chance that the QAnon is a hostile thing from the secret police or something?
I think that it's really hard to like tell where it came from. There's a part of me that's like, okay, so based out of the Philippines, that's already like, I'm of the belief that Jim Watkins is Q, like pretty much. Like I don't know what the other arguments are. The other arguments are usually like you have to believe that all of it's real, right? That like it is like a legitimate intelligence operation, but I don't think it is. So I do think it's like quite possible it's tied to these sorts of weird CIA shit in like the South China Sea, especially like because of the Philippine base and the kind of heavy push to like China rhetoric as like for instance, like, QAnon says like, oh, we're going to leave Israel for last, like when we're talking about American foreign policy, but the real people who control American foreign policy are the Chinese, which is fucking insane to think that the Chinese are controlling American foreign policy from the inside more than fucking Israel is absolute batshit lunacy.
For the record, I just Googled Jim Watkins. I had no idea who that was. That's the founder of 4chan.
Of 8chan.
Holy shit!
So
the little guy in the wheelchair?
No. The Hot Wheels, as he used to be called, the little guy in the wheelchair. No, he's pushed pretty hard that it's definitely Jim Watkins. He like worked with him, and this is the guy who's the only guy. He's confirmed the Q trip code like multiple times. So like he is literally the authenticator of it, and he owns the platform on which he's operating. So it's like it's the only thing that happens on that platform. He also owned a bunch of other like Q
Japanese
associated
pornography website.
Yes. So this is what makes me. I'm gonna get a little tinfoil hatty here or whatever, but like we all know, like pornography is a big part of like psyops in the 20th century, right? So if you have this guy who is in the Philippines and he used to be in the army, and then he gets hired to do, the army pays for him to learn computer science in these early days, and then he's outposted in the Philippines, and his main job is to de-censor and host Japanese pornography for the Japanese audiences. That like to kind of circumvent their own internal censorship laws. Like I think you could possibly like connect some of those dots there. I don't know what the goal of that would be necessarily. I don't know, but like as a money laundering thing, like there's the whole situation is very strange.
Do you think what we did to the Japanese qualifies as cultural Marxism?
I don't know, but it's been a massive fucking triumph. Like the Japanese are like the best form of Americans possible. Yeah,
they're. If you ever think of what people characterize about Americans, I had a friend growing up that was Japanese. His dad was some kind of businessman or whatever, and they had a satellite and they had a Japanese TV on, all the time. And this is like it's could have been what, the late '90s or something like that. So America is still pretty boring about this kind of thing. So we turn on the TV and like there'll be TV programs that last like 6 minutes. They're shouting the entire time. There's just explosive graphics. It looked like some kind of extreme idiocracy stuff. It was.
Oh yeah, like they had that. Like you ever see like the wall show where it's like a cutout?
Yeah.
It's like a styrofoam wall in different shapes. Like we just copy a bunch of their shit. Like they're really on the cutting edge there. Yeah, I mean they also care a lot more about a lot of Western culture than we do. And they hold on to it more. And they're also more like, they can get around like a lot of the kind of cultural chilling effects that exist in America for like the creation of art. Like they don't really have the same taboos about things. And they also like don't even know to have the same taboos. So you can have like
on immigration.
Well, yeah, you can have a show like Attack on Titan, which is like literally like the closest thing to fascist propaganda I've ever seen, where it's like you have like there's like this like feudal European villages, which are like a martial society where you have to defend from like these hideous monstrosities that are trying to like invade and like take down your wall or whatever. And that's like the whole show. And like the people who like it the most are like pretty woke type people. But it's literally like, I don't know, the Japanese can get away with a lot. And I respect them for it because someone's got to keep making art.
The censorship thing is bizarre. Like, whatever much you say about Moldbug, you've seen media say that we are sovereign. You've seen media tell the ruler that you will tell you when you can talk. You've seen Fox News pull the fucking plug on him.
The president of the United States.
Yeah, I mean, I like this is like it's kind of funny. A lot of people are getting kind of NRX pilled like really late these days. Like we were noting Glenn Greenwald, noting the sovereignty of the media recently. But
that was today or something, right?
So all of this seems like kind of old news to me. It was kind of like what I enjoyed in the 2016 election, where I was getting in trouble with all these libs for talking about how I like hated democracy for so long and like how I thought it was like the worst system ever. And then like the Trump won, and like all these people who were like calling me a Nazi or whatever for saying I didn't like democracy were now like, you know what? I don't know if I believe in democracy anymore. But they believe it. They're like because of like stupid people who vote for Trump. But yeah, I feel like that's more like I don't know. Everyone's kind of figuring this out, or they're not. I don't know. The real question is like what happens on the left now. The Trump sphere is pretty easy to predict. But there's going to be a massive split between the people who supported Biden tacitly and the people who supported him like actively.
Right. So this is one of the big questions. So what do you think this is good? So there was a very comfortable place from when Obama was in office where you could be the either bad boy leftist or say common sense leftist, or you say, well, if we get these guys to just pipe down about the id poll and just talk more about the healthcare, everything would be gravy. But you're not being like hunted by the SPLC or something.
Yeah, I don't know if you wouldn't be hunted by the SPLC, but you would have been hunted by Reddit moderators or whatever. Like a lot of that is actually cooled down, in my opinion, from what it was. Like leftist circles were really fucking nuts with the launch of the progressive stack. Like that shit already went all the way through the internet, and like you can, if you like survived it, you're kind of still around and it's like kind of fine. Like Nick Fuentes has a YouTube show. I don't really know how fucking bad things are or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. Bro Pairs running around. I saw him tweeting today. We were talking about that because there were all these little communities that were before things where a lot of these sort of technologies were developed. Something Awful is one I've heard you guys talk about a lot. We have a friend. Have you heard of Shakesville?
Shakesville? I don't think so.
Yes. So this was like we'll have somebody on to talk about it shortly. It was sort of a blogging community. This is where like a lot of the ultra feminist stuff was coming out. One of the things that came out with the Something Awful that reminds me is like people eventually figured out like the end of every argument is like you're mad or you care about this more than I do, and then it really confused conversations where like people were entering the conversation be like, I want to tell this guy he's wrong about politics, but like I already know where the conversation ends, so I have to like approach this guy about a bomb or whatever, and I have to immediately say, you care about this situation more than me. Why are you mad? It was very weird.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is fucking like Gen X shit. Like most of what I see in the left is kind of like LARPing as Gen X type shit. This is what I've been saying for a long time about them. Like they're very much I said they're like metaphysically stuck in the Bush era, and that might not even be the second Bush era, but might be the first one. But like they don't really understand the cultural shifts. They're still just trying to hold on to a kind of detached perspective, but one that is simultaneously devoted to the goals of one particular political party. It's like, you're like, I'm a Democrat, but I'm like a cool, like leftist Democrat. I'm a Democrat because it's like, I can't be a communist. They won't let me be a communist, so I have to vote for Joe Biden.
I don't want to talk about it too much because it's not, the shakes thing is not really important, but her little model, which was just in your mind mentally replace it with super woke victimology. I'm a victim. You need to rearrange the entire world around me. You should be in jail for saying things that hurt my, blah blah.
For people who don't know, this is a pre-Tumblr blog.
It was like a web forum that predated Tumblr. So they're the opposite of the thing that you were talking about, where it's like, oh, we're cool Gen X, Gen X guys. We don't care about this stuff. The Shakes people, they really, really care. Caring's the most important thing. Actually, not caring is
bad. Not caring means that you're privileged because it's a privilege to not care.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to worry like I have to worry.
Yeah, I have to be like this. You're making me do this to you by not caring about me.
I would like to see how old
abusive.
that woman. I wonder if she's a Gen Xer or a millennial. Because that's actually the Gen X thing is a great point, because that attitude hit its peak in the when was it? Was it 2004? When was it that they had that Jon Stewart rally that Mark Ames just obliterated?
Oh my god!
I went to that shit when I was a kid. I'm not kidding. Yeah.
Holy shit!
It wasn't even with me. It was like my friend had my friend, again, they were like Unitarians. And his family was going and they invited me.
The atheist church.
So we all went. It was pretty dumb. I remember I got there and I was like, wow, this sucks. Like I'm just standing here. It was like very hyper Reddit too. I remember someone had a sign that said what time does the narwhal bacon?
Yeah,
I'm not even kidding. Yeah. But this was like still when like Redditors were like, we're not Dig. Like Dig is like the shitty website. This is like the Reddit still when it was like posting like cryptocurrency drug markets and shit. But
have you ever seen Coca-Cola produce this OK soda?
Yes. Dan Klaus did the artwork on it. That's the most Gen X shit fucking ever, man.
What the fuck, dude? How did it go that far?
Oh man, it's like marketing. Like that's like, it's sort of like we were talking about modern art, right? Where it's like who's in on the joke, like who's the joke on and who's in on the joke. Like the joke for me is like whatever ad guy. Like I feel like I should have fucking gone into advertising, man. Like I feel like it's in my fucking blood. Like I really could have. I really think I could have. I did interviews for it and shit, and I was like, I think I'd be good at this. And I got pretty far with almost no qualifications in like the various rounds of interviews. If I'd really pushed for it, I'd probably be running some of this shit. But like the mentality to really be good at it is the most cynical shit in the world. Like, and that's why I think I'd be good at it, because I'm extremely cynical about these sorts of things. But like, think about the guy who pitched OK Soda as an idea and being like, well, think about how it's going to like maximize sales. Like with these fucking idiots, like they'll buy their own fucking sense of authentic rebellion. You know what I mean? Like they'll purchase that shit.
I'm drinking this soda, ironically.
Yeah, exactly. Like they'll do it. Yeah. Like you can. It's a big market.
There's a factory. Yeah. There's a factory with those giant aluminum drums that are like 800 gallons at a time. There's machines running. You talk about the advertising. It makes me think of I don't think there's anybody else in the world that can sort of light up the Chapo Reddit for like 2 weeks at a time, like one of your tweets.
Yeah, it's they cheer.
Why
cheered
is that?
When my house was on fire. That's what I.
What?
Yeah, this was years ago. They actually used to reply to me and stuff back in the day, back in like
And you're
2015.
not directing it to them. You're not calling them out. They'll just find something you write and
Yeah.
they
I always say a subtweet like an archetype and watch people like jump in front of the bullet. You know, like a lot of the times people will like stop subtweeting me, and I was literally just like making fun of like a tendency in thought that I've noticed. Like I wasn't accusing you particularly of anything, but you've identified yourself with my parody, which is very funny to me. I don't know why I blow them up. I think it's probably because I'm supposed to be them. Like I was socialized in the exact environments where that's exactly like how I would turn out. Like I know all of these people. I'm like from that world very specifically. Like I went to NYU. I'm from like the Northeast. Like I know all the signifiers. I know all the cultural touchstones. Like I'm very much like was supposed to be a part of that world probably. But I also have like other interests and, you know, I have other weird things that kind of push me away from that, I guess. Probably more just like a serious interest in literature and culture as opposed to like a kind of just like very surface level status oriented one. That's mostly what it's about is like, you know, they always accuse people of being pretentious and pretending to have read things X, Y, or Z. But that's really just like projection entirely on their part. They're the only people in the world who think that way or because that's how they think. Like, you know, it's all about like how does this make me look? It's all like fashion oriented. It's very much a fashionable. It's about adopting your pose. And that's why their politics are very odd because they never come out and say like this is what I'm standing for like very directly in a consistent way, but they come up with kind of these little like stand-up comedy sort of routine things where, you know, they're not like, oh, we're not implying that like Joe Biden's better, but we are saying that Hunter Biden's kind of has a huge cock in his alpha. Like, and it's like, yeah, okay, I can kind of see what that means.
That after school special thing, that oh god, that was so cringe. You know, you got me. So I'm certainly not all the way in. I'm sure it's going to take years for me to. So the William Blake thing, right? I always think of so I got some books. I always think there's this amazing quote in there. You know, these books they'll just because I don't know if people know. So that, you know, now if there's like you know, if you so like you have a book coming out, ampersand, right? Okay, this guy like they'll be in the book, they'll say like, okay, so this is like so this next thing we're gonna show you is like just like it's like world class philosophy, and he just sort of wrote it on like 12 things the size of baseball cards, and this is just sort of what we have. But in between, you know, they'll have little quotes and stuff. So he's at this like competition or their gallery. They're selling art and stuff. And he's gets up to speak, and his stuff didn't sell for the most. He didn't win or anything, and he just gets up there and he stands up front and he says, so my pieces didn't sell. It's like, that's fine. He says, 200 years from now, when we're all dead, people are still going to be talking about my shit, and your shit is going to be irrelevant and gone from the face of the earth. And I just thought the most baller thing I've ever heard.
Like, that's like, I love Blake so fucking much, man. There's so many, like a lot of the writers I like a lot have kind of had that attitude. That's how Nabokov was in his scene at the time. He would he in his memoir, he talks about how he would like write, he would like be envisioning how he'd write his memoir for his own particular moments. Cause he kind of like knew that he was going to be a huge like literary sensation. Blake was kind of the same way. He never doubted his ability to be like a prophet. Like he considered himself more a prophet than a poet even. Like he considered those two to be the same activities. And I always respect that sort of, that's some baller shit, as you said. But he's absolutely right, too. Who's the fuck cares about anyone else who's at that market? Like, his artwork is going to be around for longer than the British Empire will be.
People misunderstand that, I think, a lot because they'll think, well, this is just someone who's like full of themselves or a narcissist or something. I always think of it like, do you want to go to a restaurant where they say that we have the best fucking steak you've ever had, or do you want to go to
Yeah, it's the false modesty is kind of a big part of if you're going to say like one thing that's sort of puritanical, I guess, in American mores is like false modesty amongst the middle classes. It's not something the high class or the low class do, but
this is taking responsibility.
Yeah, no,
you know?
it is. That's like I like Blake's quote about Jesus in the everlasting gospel, which is I was standing by when Jesus died. What they called humility, I called pride.
Damn. Yeah, yeah, he's money,
On the
man.
money, absolutely. I really think that he is like a legitimate prophet. Like I think that he was understood like what modernity was going to be more than like anyone else at the time. Like he predict like it's fucking crazy how right on he is about everything. Like if you were, it's like really dense stuff, and it's like hard for people to read because he has his own like cosmology. You have to like understand that he's rewriting the entire like religious history of the West through these other figures. Like he has like a totally different interpretation of almost everything that happens in the Bible that almost than anyone else who reads the Bible. But when I read it now after reading Blake, it's like it seems apparent to me. Like it feels more legitimate.
One thing I heard you talk about before was one of the things that the distant right has that's like it's like to me, from what I understand, this is a very anti-racist thing, but it wasn't created to be so. This is a straight up code, right? So they have this thing, this castizo futurism,
Yeah.
right? And it's basically just saying that, well, we know we're going to lose this demographic destiny game that the parties are playing, but it's going to be fine because of this, and so we'll just sort of white people and Hispanics will merge. I thought you connected that one time to something Blake had wrote, I think.
I probably closer like he William Blake.
You had like a universal race
Yeah,
thing.
well,
or
the person who
something?
first connected this is Wyndham Lewis, who was extreme. Like he took his whole like manifesto for art from William Blake. I mean, that's how like a lot of the modernists were too. Like James Joyce always carried around a complete edition of William Blake with him since he was like a teenager. And this is something almost no one talks about because William Blake, his like prophetic works, like the longer works, are things that almost no one reads anymore, except for like poets themselves. He's like a poet's poet in a way. But he was so influential on the modernists. And when Wyndham Lewis wrote about America, he said in American Cosmic Man, after he had moved here, he said that that was basically the destiny of America. It was like a place where like it was like a post-historical state, right? Like you come to America to like kind of lose your racial identity, right? And like you become an American. What is like a Latino? Latino is basically is like a word for American, right? Like anyone can be a Latino. Like you're like, yeah, I'm a Latino. You're a Latino. Guess who's Latino? The main character in fucking Gilmore Girls, guys. That's right. Alexis Bledel is a Latina, and she was all over the Latina magazines at the time while playing the face of the Wasp, like the last Wasp on TV.
I could have sworn that Blake was the thing that you were talking about, Blog Beef. Maybe it was somebody else. But I could have swore someone asked like, who's the Wignat asking who's the Black Blake, and it's like it's Blake.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Owned.
yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, pretty much. He was very much on the side. Like he was very much on the side of the Africans, like all the time. He always wrote about Africa as like being like the heart-shaped continent, which was like abused by like imperialism and stuff. Like he's like a progressive in that sense, but has a more of like cosmic vision. He's like not very politically interested. He did support the French Revolution at the time, but he also writes about like the excesses of it because like his characters who are like the revolutionary characters, they also like kind of torment themselves. Like it's like a Milton Satan. Like, you know, Milton Satan is like, you know, the first Republican, right? As some people say, like in the socialist Republican sort of sense. But like he sees that, but he also sees this sort of further reconciliation with like the powers that be in the future, that like all of this is sort of like a necessary dialectic. Like he really is like a kind of Hegelian. Like he's looking at these forces and saying that eventually they will have to converge. And I think that's going to happen. Like you'll have America, like Latino superstate, and you're going to have like Eurasia. I see that as a future.
So it always makes me think, why the fuck did we give up the Panama Canal? But you can totally see. So I always think of one of the two of the things that come to mind. So one of the things is that like American like SJWs. This is something that's been remarked on by distant right. Have known about this for a while. Is that they're not really ready for like their ideas about white supremacy and how they are flipped in South America.
Yeah.
That's going to be very confusing to them.
Absolutely. Like, it already is confusing to them. They're trying to, like, deconstruct the Latino, like, the Latinx identity or whatever that they set up, or that they were, like, setting up. Like, now they're like, whoa. Now we have to talk about, like, Afro-Latinos versus blah, 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 versus, like, the neo-Nazi Latinos who came over from Germany. So it totally fucks with them. But that also sort of more shows that like racism is like actually less racist than anti-racism in another way. Because like various races can all get along with each other, which is the funniest thing about that corner of Twitter and like the internet is like you'll have like Croat racists and like like Indian Brahmin, like high caste racists. You'll have like Ethiopian racists, and, like Somali racists, and like Brazilian racists, American racists from the South, American racists from the Northwest, Canadian racists, and they're all getting along, and they all hate each other. They all make fun of each other for their like ethnicities or whatever. But in a deeper sense, like they have more of a solidarity than amongst these leftists who argue with each other all the time and like are actually racist in the sense that like they believe that being a certain ethnicity like implies a certain political perspective.
The bet like the fun. Some of the funniest interactions you've seen is like I've seen was like when they're cheering on like R1B Nigerians owning whatever the Flemish or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the right kind of this versus the wrong kind of. It's all like a parody of racism.
Yeah,
almost,
yeah. They have a very funny form of racism. It's definitely more sickening to me. Trump being called a racist to me is like something that's amazing. It's kind of like unfathomable. Like that's one of the weirdest things because I really don't think he is. Like I don't think he fundamentally is in any way.
The Wignats will tell you that.
No.
They're like he strongly desires the adoration of POC.
Yeah, he wants that. Like he absolutely like is like that's. I feel like one thing that kind of drove him nuts, right? Because like you look at like. Did you see? I posted this the other day, maybe yesterday, where I was like, "Does anyone remember this? Do you remember when Trump deported like a 92-year-old like Nazi a collaborator or something? He deported a 92-year-old man who had his like citizenship stripped in like 2004 and was just like living in Queens and just like dying."
This is like a guy who must have been like 14.
Yeah.
He
was literally 92 years old, and Trump became obsessed with this at the beginning of getting this through because he thought it would prove to everyone that like he's like really not racist. But like no one cared. Like no one remembers it. And he does stuff like that all the time.
He does sometimes seem to have I don't know if there's a little name for it, but like that kind of so the attitude the Japanese had towards the Jews around World War II where they're like, we're not sure if you guys run the world, but in case you do, like here's gifts.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump is racist by the modern definition of the word, which is made up. So it's like he's not racist by what anyone would have thought about as racist in like 1980. But
yeah, well, here's like the real irony, like is like you have like Joe Biden who's like writing crime bills to lock up black people with Strom Thurmond and literally arming the Azov battalion in Ukraine, which are like neo-Nazis who are then like training like some of the people who are involved in some of the Christchurch shooting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And like you have that guy win and this is like a victory for like anti-racism or something. Like it's completely fucking crazy. And the only people who believe that narrative are like white libs, like bourgeois white people. They're the only people who believe that. Like I don't know any like black people who believe that narrative at all.
A lot of my left wing friends is sort of so right now Trump he looks pretty sympathetic in this whole thing, but I think that the final answer I get on all this stuff is like it's like yeah it looks cool, but he's connected to the RNC, and I can't do anything with the RNC. They're just zero from me. That always makes me think, well, maybe Blago will be the guy.
I mean, let's God, Kanye West really is kind of more the future of what that sort of politics will look like, I think.
He's got the attitude. I know people talk about Holly. I can't. Holly's a geek. I don't
but
see
come on,
that,
the people you're talking about, you know what their deal is. Like it's not a matter of well, we can't support them because of this. It's because the other side's going to give them stuff, and it's not necessarily good stuff. But like, okay, everybody, all the online leftists who hate Joe Biden, how many of them are pretty stoked about the idea of getting $50,000 of their university debt?
Yeah, that's not going to happen, though.
I know that, but I'm just saying that this is a well, actually, no,
I think
not that much.
Why not? Who's on the hook for that money? The lenders will get theirs. The supporters of the political party will get theirs in the form of like direct patronage. It goes the general fund's on the hook. Who cares?
Yeah, I'm not saying it like couldn't happen. I'm saying I don't think that it'll be like that much. Like,
I can see that. They're not going to burn a ton of calories.
Yeah, it'll be something small. It'll be something small, and won't even be like a universal policy. You'll have to like qualify for it somehow.
Yeah, they love that. They can hire more.
Yeah, exactly.
More
No, that's the real patronage. Isn't the giving the money away? It's giving away the like mechanism, the mechanism by which you can like that you give the money away.
Yes, we had a guest on not that long ago, Tingzorg, Swedish guy. You've probably heard of him, and he really went into depth about that. It's something that, from my background, I don't think about it a lot because like I don't know anybody who's ever going to be in the position to have that. But you're right, like the creating middlemen to deal with this money that you're going to dole out. That's the whole project, and that explains why you get these weird, complicated schemes. They'll talk about reparations every once in a while. And one of their favorite ideas is, we should form this like council of learned, I guess.
Talking about it is is what the real reparations.
Yeah.
You could dole out this money, and you
stuff.
figure, that's the ultimate dream for any kind of patronage project, that you're just going to be handed a bunch of money and you get to decide how it's doled out. Like, that makes you powerful immediately.
Yeah, because the promise isn't the real promise isn't the money at the end, but it's the positions of power that you would have to be able to give that money out. Because like, that's what so many people, they're like, when you see those like viral things on the left or whatever, it's like, what are you going to do after the revolution? And the guy's like, I'm going to design the fucking uniforms or whatever. Or like, I'll be an entertainer or whatever. What they want to do after the end of the revolution is, be the guy who is paid to be a revolutionary. So that's what they'd be getting to do here, right?
I was talking about this the other day, and trying to think of like if there's like a working class version of a PMC, if that sounds hilarious. But we definitely thought of one. So think about this. Like in any kind of like let's say any work that's done outdoors, you need these teams of safety officers.
Hell yeah, OSHA. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yep. That's PMC make work SJW jobs for working class.
For sure.
Work.
I mean, the mafia used to do this very fucking specifically, right? Like, you look at like they made those like positions for themselves all the time doing exactly that.
They're easy. You just walk around with a clipboard.
You don't even have to show up. You just have to fill out the clipboard later.
The bad flu has put that on steroids. I know someone who works in the trades, and like since like March, his job, which used to be like backbreaking labor, is now like or was until recently, wiping things down and handing out masks and stuff like that.
He's wetting his beak. Is he a big? Big into politics? Where'd that job come from? You know what I'm saying? We got PMCs too.
I would say another form of that is this is big in the Northeast right now. Is I can't tell you how many people I know who are now in like the solar industry. Do you guys have that?
That's good. We don't have it, but no. makes
Yeah,
sense.
it's like big from grants in the area, but it's really fucked because basically what it is you work as a middleman for a company who's leasing out the roof space on people's houses. So you're just like commoditizing people's roofs, and like they
For
go through
something
with
that
it.
doesn't work that well anyway.
Yeah,
Solar power is shit.
Yeah. It's pretty bad. It's pretty stupid. It's like total make work jobs. But before my friends had these jobs, they had no jobs because there's no jobs there at all.
That's one of the.
I support
Yeah, I know.
make work.
It wasn't like didn't Keynes say like, it would be better to just dig holes. Like the solar panel thing, like that's like, so these solar panels, they're pretty. This chemicals processes to make them is really bad for the environment. They're not that effective. Like it would probably be better to just pay someone to dig a hole and then fill it back in than to do that. But
I mean, there's lots of things they could be doing. It's just that like people lack the kind of infrastructural imagination now, right? Like we're doing hyperloop fucking trials instead of building high speed rail and stuff like that. Like I don't know. I think the rot in America of like just the imagination is like the biggest problem. I don't know. I don't know if anyone else would agree with me on that, but I feel like people fundamentally like lack political imagination. That's one of why like part of Trump's major appeal, right, is that he like inspired people to imagine like possible things. And that's even like when everyone's imagining like, well, like how is he going to take over and become emperor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. No one would have been thinking this like in a positive sense about a president in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, I mean, if people like what those things can compound, and so you don't. And by the way, even if you're not allowed to be emperor, people like Stalin and stuff were never like officially Putin. I don't. Is he like even officially the Grand Poobah? You can still run things with a fake formal title if you have this built up a strong network. The thing about the trains always makes me think like I've just decided to like is the second they start building a bullet train from Southern California to Las Vegas, then I'll ready to talk about it. But like that seems to be so profitable, and that it's not being done, that it's like, well, why even bother thinking about this? How could they not? How could they not build
profitable
that? Like
with the price of fuel, what it is.
From what I understand, like millions of people in Southern California empty out and go straight to Las Vegas on Friday at 5 p.m. every single week of the year.
Yeah,
and they.
No, I agree. Like I mean, the real reason why we don't have these things is like, I think again, it's like failure of imagination. Like why isn't Jeff Bezos just building that? Or like, why isn't Elon Musk building that? Why are they obsessed with this stupid like 20th century nonsense? Like we have to go into space or whatever. It's like stupid. Like it's really dumb. Like in America at the time when we were doing the space program, it made sense because we had just built up our infrastructure, right? Like to a degree that no one else in the world could even like compete with. So it was like, well, what can we do now? Like we gotta do the fucking go to the moon or whatever. But now it's like we don't even have an infrastructure. Everything's falling apart. So it's like you're jumping to this like sci-fi futurism. It's like totally anachronistic. Like our elites are like, they just have these stupid ideas from like their science fiction reading as children. Like that's literally where it comes from. Like they're all fans of these horrible science fiction novels from the 20th century, and they like don't really have a realistic understanding of like the world. Like that's why it's like you look at like the Chinese, like what are they obsessed with? They're building infrastructure, right? Like the Belt and Road all over the place. Like they get it. They're actually copying the fucking Marshall Plan, and it's like we just don't have that anymore. What do we want?
You're never going to stop the drive for exploration, and I mean, you shouldn't want to, no matter how.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm talking about like priorities, though, But it's like, well, it's like, so think about like the kind
people
of.
People said this during the space program too, by the way.
Oh, I know, but it made more sense at the time than it does now, is what I'm saying. Because it's like you even look. What was the movie with Matthew McConaughey, the Chris Nolan one with the space travel? It's like set in the future.
Interstellar.
Yeah, Interstellar, right? So in Interstellar, like, what is the country like there? It's fucking trash. America's gone to total shit. Right? But the last thing that it has is that they're like, we can go to space again. And like no one in there like the big tragedy is that no one believes that anyone ever went to space. Like, oh my God, it was all a lie. Like America never accomplished anything because the only thing America ever accomplished was putting a man on the moon. But it's like The movie's not like it's very different from something like Death Stranding. Death Stranding is a much more realistic version where it's like we have to like fucking rebuild our infrastructure.
Is that the game everybody
It's the
hated where
Kojima one, yeah.
Where you
You just
walk
walk around.
with boxes on your back?
I kind of like that. It's kind of a huge troll on the gamers though, because it's like that's what the world actually needs, right? Is like people walking around like building infrastructure, as opposed to the games they'd rather be playing, which is like invade the Middle East or go to space.
You know, when they live in the South, I spent a lot of time in Alabama. I love Alabama. South Alabama is it's a very poor place. But something that comes up a lot is whenever you talk about North Alabama, I'm like, oh, North Alabama, it's pretty nice up there. People always give you a look. I'm like, they're like, what the hell are you talking about? It's fucking Alabama. And how long ago was it? Well, 60, 70 years ago. NASA used to dump a shitload of money there, and it's still. Like that stuff is the infrastructure. I live in Texas, so I don't. You live in Texas now, right? Right. So have you ever heard the Balmorea pool?
No.
Okay, so this is just one of a billion things that happened out of the what were these work projects that happened in under FDR,
like the
work progress,
WPA stuff,
right? So. Yeah, so one of the things they did, so there's like some kind of natural springs going on out in the middle of fucking nowhere and out on the West Texas, right? And so they were like, okay, well, let's turn one of these natural springs into a gigantic fucking pool, right? And so they built it. So there's this humongous fucking spring pool there, spring-fed pool. And like there's no other, like this area is like there's a decent amount of people there, but it's desert enough to where like you can't just pick up the phone and get a contractor to drop you a pool. There's no pools around there, but there's a lot of people, and it's hotter than hell. And so it is like the most important thing in the world to them for like 100 fucking miles to this day.
Yeah, like that was a time again, right, where it was like what like instead of becoming like people making the next app or designing a way to make phone games more addictive, they were doing shit like that. You know, and it's like we just have
speed.
We have like that's why I think it's like a failure of our imagination, like because we kind of like everyone's kind of out of space in their imaginations of like what's possible. No one wants to be like pragmatic or to do like things that are like. Doesn't that sound so boring? Don't you want to go to Mars? Why would you build a pool in West Texas? That doesn't sound that great compared to going to Mars, man. Like give up your pools. We're all going to Mars in the future. We have to make sacrifices so we can go to Mars. But it's like that's not like, you know, if that's giving a lot of people jobs, like, you know, if they're saying there's going to be like a whole Mars industry or some shit, and that's going to revitalize America, that's one thing. But it doesn't seem to be like that's the case, right? Like,
yeah, but their goal isn't to go to Mars; is to build heaven on Earth, as we were saying earlier. That's their goal, which is, you know, you could actually go to Mars. Their goal is even bolder.
Hey, man, but when you're at that pool, you probably feel like it's heaven on Earth, you know?
Oh hell yeah! It's well the building. You know, they probably couldn't fuck up trying to build too much heaven on earth in America. I don't want them building heaven in their basement in New Zealand.
What I'm saying is that they've lost what that would mean, right? Like they want to build. They don't even want to build heaven on earth. They want to build heaven on Mars.
No, hold on. That's not what I mean. What I'm saying is the people who you would want to do these things that we're talking about, like now they're focused on. When I say heaven on earth, I mean like the utopian ideal,
right.
egalitarian.
I was just being clever. That's all. But I agree. Like that's part of their problem is that they like. But that's again like that's because they're stuck in this kind of like romanticized idealism as opposed to like thinking like materially. Or like pragmatically about what that would like mean. Like how do you do that in like a material form or whatever? I guess like one of the only people who's coming up with policies like in this way, I don't even agree with all of his policies. And I don't think he was like very good at politics. I don't think he has much of a future, but that was one of the interesting things about Andrew Yang is that his platform was very imaginative, which is not something you can say about almost anyone else. Like the least imaginative platform is probably Biden's. Like we all know what that's going to be. There's nothing to imagine.
Andrew Yang said one that like should be the like most offensive things, but you could tell it was like someone who was actually like trying to think. I remember he said like he said that we need to do what's that thing where you give everybody
Yeah.
UBI? He said we need to do that because like otherwise like white people are going to get really angry and they have lots of guns and they'll come kill us. So here's one way we can stop that.
Yeah.
And like I really like that back to basics. Like I don't like when people start like 100 steps ahead of the chain process. Like work through the steps with me. You know what I'm saying?
No, I mean, he's not wrong about that
Right.
at all. Like, because it's
Yeah.
like the other option, right, is just one that he can't imagine, which would be to like, make it so that those people don't get mad, and it's without just like giving them more welfare, basically. Like, but
Yeah.
that's something like no one's like, everyone takes this idea like where it's like your economic outcomes are a result of like your personal moral value to a certain degree. That's true if you belong to a quote unquote like privileged caste, right? And that just means like middle class people. So if you're like downwardly mobile in the middle class, it's because you deserve it.
One of these things, though, these WA and these great projects and stuff that I wonder is missing. Is it like so you see our mega elites and they like they dress in sweatpants, blah blah blah. We don't like one of the things I don't like is that we don't like the idea of things like regal titles or sort of these civic medals and stuff. And it's like if you so like I know there's another famous Chapo. There's another podcast that they make fun of like military guys like with the medals and stuff, right? Okay, the thing is, if you don't pay people in things like honor and stuff, which we don't like in terms of things. So if you can't pay someone like Bezos in like honors in like a shiny a wreath around his head, then we're in a very nihilistic. I feel like there is some evidence that people will do things for these.
Absolutely,
things,
Of course.
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we do have that to a degree. They're just kind of like presidential medals. Like, who cares? Who cares? Like, we just don't care about them. They do exist. But like, God, I mean, the bigger problem is in American politics always comes down to the fact that like we have this fucking idiotic electoral system, and like the mono party like duopoly or whatever, just like mystifying the like hidden oligarchy is the real problem, because it's like who believes in the like if you voted for Trump, then you care for 2 seconds that he gave a medal to someone, but no one remembers. Like who I bet Trump gave out $1 million. I'm gonna see Trump hands out medal. Let's see. Yeah, he awards 9/11. He gave one to Rush Limbaugh. Let's see.
Yeah, I remember that.
He's been awarding a lot of presidential medals. Tiger Woods got one. Babe Ruth got one posthumously. Like, this stuff does exist. It's just that no one cares.
Yeah, I want all you guys at the fucking hockey game, stand up. This is the guy that did this for you. You know what I mean?
That would be like that's like just like that would be a good system, right? Where I mean, at the same time, though, that also, like with the nature of our elites, it becomes kind of disgusting when that does happen, because I think that does happen.
Yeah.
I think that what you're talking about like does exist, and it is a phenomenon, but it's not something for like productive things, but it's more like Obama, like giving Lady Gaga a medal or something for like, telling people that they were born that way or whatever. And like, that's what constitutes heroism. Whereas like someone, like doing something actually important, like no one knows their name.
Yeah, you need to be backed by a brutal dictator and a civic religion and fun stuff. So this is one of the I like asking you big questions. Just one of the closing big questions. So I've been thinking that maybe, I don't know, sure, maybe this is a trap. I don't know. There's one of the reasons why I like Trump is simply because there's a bit of this dictatorial one guy. So I have a difficult time thinking that there can be any sort of committee shared power going forward. That like I just want to try to throw everything at any person who wants to be a dictator.
I mean, that's a pretty good heuristic for this point in American history, right? Like, it's clear that there is the kind of consensus that exists It's just an occulted one. It's like one that we're not allowed to talk about. Like this is all very like, people now saying that like I'm a conspiracy theorist again or whatever. It's very annoying for like talking about like how the CIA has like fundamentally altered American like sovereignty, like in our conceptions of it.
How can anybody say there's like you could fit the entire American press in like 3 Twitter group DMs, by the way. There's no such thing as a conspiracy, like an outlandish.
Yeah,
conspiracy.
exactly. Yeah, it's really annoying when people try to downplay the roles of these things when it's not like politically efficacious for them to recognize history for what it is. But I mean, I would agree. I would take almost anyone who like, I think anyone, like everyone wants someone to be in charge because then you have stability and then you can have like expectations. The problem is that no one can agree on who that should be. And like, it becomes very efficacious for the opposing party to portray this as like, people were calling Obama a Nazi in 2008 or whatever on Fox News. Like, and then they do that to Trump and, they're going to call Joe Biden a Nazi. Joe Biden is the real racist. Like everyone's still stuck in these democratic norms, and the way that they talk about politics and stuff is very anachronistic. It has no connection whatsoever to like the material realities of how politics functions. And that's the real problem, right? And like, that's why I say it's like a failure. It's a problem of imagination because everyone's like fucking psyoped so hard on so many levels through their whole lives that it's like, I kind of pity them because I try to explain stuff where I can, but people are just like lost in the mirror, in the maze of like who has power, like who's in charge of this, what's happening. And no one can like that's not the case in China, in China, they know damn well who's fucking in charge, same thing in Russia. They know that even in like, I feel like in France, they recognize that Macron is in charge like more than they do in America. Like, even if they don't like him.
Yeah, well, one of these things, there's always this balance of power sort of at play, and the more things get bad, the more they can sort of flip. And I always think of, so we always talk about Jim Clyburn on the show. We love Jim Clyburn, and so like there's a glimmer of hope and things like that. So 60% of the black people that took the exit poll in South Carolina said, "I'm just going to vote for whoever this guy tells me to," because he's done something at some point for me. He's built something in my district. He's communicated to me. He's recognized me as a citizen, and he's done anything for me. And so I will just, I'm on his team. And that always is struck me as man, there's a lot under
that's the basics. That's the basis of what is called like Hegelian recognition, right? This is this is what Kojève's entire concept of the political rests on. Is that sort of relationship. And I don't understand people who have different conceptions of politics beyond that, because that's like what it is, right? Like, it's like, this is the guy is either promised to do something for me or has done something for me. And that's it. Yeah. A lot of people have the perception that someone's done something for them. And sometimes like, that's all they need. It's just the perception of that. There's a lot of people right now who feel like America is a better place than it was a week ago or like 2 weeks ago or whatever, because Joe Biden is the president-elect. Like, he hasn't done fuck all for them. Nothing about America has changed. None of the facts have changed. Like, none of their realities in their lives are different. There's no difference at all, but they have the perception that something has been done for them. And what has been done for them, ultimately, this is the real fucking dark and cynical part of it, is that like the media turned down the MK Ultra conditioning machine to like an 8 from like a 10. And so people feel a sense of like, this is like the reward now. Is like, if you choose correctly, we'll torture you less. Like, we'll stop telling you live under a fascist regime and you're like complicit in the Holocaust or something.
You noticed this a lot on social media in 2016, and I saw it again in this election. But obviously, it was a different crowd each time. A lot of people really enjoyed the sports team kind of triumph over fuck you Patriots, you suck. Fuck you Hillary people. Here's a puppy, eat shit, and then they're doing something like that. Is for a lot of people, like, that is the only tangible benefit that you get from an election, which is kind of fucked up.
Well, this is what's really fucked because if you look at like Steve Bannon, right, where he got a lot of these ideas is from when he was running a gold market for World of Warcraft, right?
I'm sorry. What?
Yeah, no, Steve Bannon with one of the guys who what is this called? Steve, I gotta look this up real fast. Sorry, guys. It's like IQM. Fuck, what is this? Gold farm. Yeah, he was a gold farmer. So he owned.
For any of you guys who don't know, what that means is they would pay people in China to play
IGE.
an online video game, and those people would
By
collect
the way,
fake...
there's gold slavery.
Yes, there is, and there's like
with chains, manacles.
But Steve Bannon, he owned an IGE, which he went in with one of those guys from the documentary about like pedophilia in Hollywood or whatever.
Yeah.
With one of those guys. He went into this, and but he had some interesting things to say about it because he said like you have these people in like real life, they're like nobodies, right? And they don't like have anything. But then you go on like this virtual reality world, and they can like mine like fake currencies, and these sorts of things, and they become somebody. And this is what's happened to like the political sphere also. So you have like a lot of this is just like a surrogate activity. It's like an outlet. People feel like they become somebody.
Because they have a blue badge,
that sort of stuff, or we're not immune from this ourselves, right? Like we're on podcasts, and we think we're doing something or whatever. Like this matters ultimately.
Right.
When it kind of doesn't. It does and it doesn't, but it mostly doesn't. Mostly doesn't matter. Like we're not building the fucking future here.
No, this is entertainment.
If you have a big,
it's like mostly entertainment, but that same thing though with people's like following the news cycle, like it's been very much turned into an entertainment genre. That's also another reason why Trump was like extremely effective, is because he's extremely entertaining. Like he's very, very fun to watch. Like I don't know, it was a great 4 years if you weren't like one of the people who were like super butthurt all the time. It was very entertaining.
Do you think maybe they enjoyed that though? Like that game?
Oh, I think they do.
Yeah. A lot of people who love to be a martyr.
Yeah, they like being mad. They don't, and if they can't be mad at politics, they'll find something else to be mad about. That's just the case. I don't know if there's a lot of like fucking spiritual sickness in America too, where like that's kind of, I don't know, man. Like America, I have no hope for America. I guess that's why people think I'm blackpilling all the time. Like I don't think things are going to get better here. Like I don't think anything really good is going to happen in our lifetimes. Like maybe farther in the future something good will happen, but I don't know, man. Like it doesn't look good. It does not look good. And today you had the Chinese get inducted into like the super chambers of the UN or whatever. So they're reviewing America's human rights abuses. So that's real sovereignty.
Yeah, that's never a good sign.
Real sovereignty.
There's we have a friend, and we were talking to him about we talk about this subject. Speed running comes up. That's such a for our age bracket. That is such that is one of the most nihilistic things I could have never imagined. But we were talking about this came over these sorts of hobbies, and someone brought up cave diving. You ever seen
like
this?
Spelunking?
The underwater version.
Okay, yeah.
So there's like the death toll is just like it couldn't be like, so if anything goes wrong and things go wrong all the time and you're having to take off your equipment, anyways, it's
worse than
like,
climbing Everest, right?
Right, so it's just outrageously dangerous. And it's like, man, why do you think they do that? And he's like, I think a lot of people just want to die.
Yeah, no,
that's
that's super real. That's super real. I think there's a huge like death drive in America. A lot of people say this all the time. That's like real popular Twitter content, is talking about how much you want to die.
Yeah.
It's very,
knock on wood.
I think that's like a big like antinatalist thing. Like I think antinatalism is like the biggest like problem with the West, or like America specifically, is the popularity of just like utilitarian like Malthusianism, which fundamentally like culminates in antinatalism. Like if you follow the logic of this sort of system, it is like that life itself is like bad, and people say like humans are a cancer on the planet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, it's that is one of the most. America used to have this picture that was produced to be like propaganda for the man in the high castle, and it was just a picture of a family basically. They had swastikas and stuff, but there was that was just like, you know, they didn't tell a story. It was they just had swastikas, but just the picture image of a family.
It was like a Rockwell,
be,
kind of like a
Yeah,
Rockwell painting.
exactly.
You know, oh, look at this! Is a blonde guy, blonde wife, and they got kids, and this is fucking evil. It's something. There was a person. There was a really great. Oh God, God strike me down for this sentence. There's a great viral tweet years ago where there was a commercial that had it's like just a family. It's just like a man, a woman, and their kid, and a person was like, this is immoral and racist and wrong. This propaganda you're producing, and like there was nothing to it. It was just. It was, if I had to describe it like that's like happiness. Like this person's like this, they're recoiling from it in disgust. This is horrible. You need to ban this.
Yeah, I mean, so I was gonna. This might be. So I want to give like a brief summary of this book of this socialist realist book, because it's pretty interesting. So it's called Cement. It's called by Fyodor Vasilyevich Gladkov, and it's called Cement. And what it's about is about the end of the Civil War and the Revolution. And it's about a soldier who like comes back to his town, and the cement factory is no longer working, and he wants to get the cement factory to start working again so that they can build like the socialist future. But like they're having all these problems with like turning the socialist ideology from like the revolutionary towards that, and like the biggest thing in it is like gender issues. And the big thing is like his wife like leaves him to become like a revolutionary too. And then when he finds her again, she's like not interested in like being like she's given their kid to like a Soviet orphanage basically to be raised like by the state essentially. And she's been cheating on him with like Stalin, like the figure who is just a self-insert of Stalin. And
nice.
And the whole thing is like him learning that he has to get rid of his like bourgeois like reactionary notions of family life, and like they never get back together at the end, and he just works. He just works and he works and he works. And and this is, where is this? One thing then was, this is toward at the end. One thing then was necessary, the party and party work, no personal life. What was his love hidden in unseen depths? What were these problems and thoughts which tortured his mind? All were survivals of an accursed past. All came from his father, his youth, the romanticism of intellectuals. All this must be extirpated to the very root. These sick figments of the mind must be destroyed. There was only one thing, the party, and everything to the last drop of his blood must be given to it. Whether he would be readmitted or not made no difference. He, Serge Ivagan, as a personality did not exist. There was only the party, and he was an insignificant item in this great organism. But that day, he was going through his old pain once more. So, but this isn't like a satirical representation of this. This is what he has to learn. Through all of this is how insignificant his personal life problems are compared to the project of building the future.
You know, we have a lot of left-wing friends, and they'll talk about various passages written by the OGs about the family, and they'll tell you, well, you know, the stuff you read in Marx and Engels, you can't. They mean the bourgeoisie. They don't mean they don't the bourgeois. They don't mean when they say get rid of the family. That's bullshit. It's absolutely not true. They do mean the family. And any definition of the family will, be relegated to that.
Let's take a think about your. So I don't know who my family. Think about the Americans that went over to World War One to fight and die for
no reason, but yeah,
and how far is it from that? Now, I'm not saying
that's the exact idea. Actually, that is literally the exact idea, right? Like it's like they considered like the combination of the worker. This is like about the soldier becoming the worker as like the same figure. Like that the fight doesn't end with the end of the battles, but like every day that you're making cement, you are part of the revolutionary army, like building the future.
That's
I mean, we have that. Yeah, we have that here, but it's not even like one where it gives like a kind of noble envisioning of it, but it's like every day that you're working at Uber, you're contributing to the future or something.
I have it. I swear to God. I mean, I will. I have. There's been time I've worked over 24 hours once, and I came home and I had this bullshit fake feeling like I had really done something heroic, and I had done fucking nothing. I had just destroyed my body for no reason. We're tuned. I think we have all these buttons in us waiting to be pushed, and they're easy to take advantage of.
Yeah, I mean, that's just like, I think that there's like a general, like, people have this conception of, this is what the elites say about factory work, right? Is that it's like dehumanizing and it's bad, right? And it's like, we don't even want those jobs back because no one should have those jobs. And if anyone can have those jobs, then we'll give it to, like, we'll kindly give it to people who have even worse jobs, who are like, sharecroppers in Myanmar or some shit. They'll make stuffed animals instead, and that's better. That's an improvement for them. But they're like, in America, we don't want anyone to have those jobs. We want everyone to have like respectable jobs, like real jobs.
Jesus
Like
Christ.
starch.
This guy is handing out black pills.
That's the case, right? And like, I don't really understand why. I mean, I've worked in a factory. It was probably one of the best jobs I ever had. Like, I'm not like even kidding. Like, it's really nice to do, like, repetitive labor isn't something that people like really dislike. Like, even Celine, when he was writing about like Fordist America and like going around to like the plants, he was talking about how much people love their jobs, because like working in a factory isn't bad. It's a really good gig. It's like, especially if you're getting paid well and like paid well enough like to survive on. It's really dependable work, and you know what you're going to do every day, and you are hanging out with the same people, and you can talk a lot of the time if you're doing repetitive labor. And a lot of like, it's like we make this sort of stuff out to be this horrible, hellish stuff, but like there's certainly more dignity to that than. Did you see the thing? GameStop, they're giving away hours on Black Friday to employees if they can make good viral TikToks. So it's like, there's much more dignity to working in a Ford plant than there is to working in like Cold Stone Creamery and like having to sing for tips, and working at GameStop and having to beg for hours on Black Friday. Like,
the most white-pilled person in my family, a huge Chad. Guys want to be him, ladies love him. He worked in a fucking pipe factory for 20 years. And he talked about they just make pipe. Right? What could be less exciting than that? And endless stories. He hazed the new guys coming in, put something funny on his hard hat. More fun than you're gonna have fucking coding databases or some bullshit.
Yeah,
like this.
it's like, I have a respect for those sorts of jobs, and I don't think that they're bad, and I think that they're genuinely good. Like, I think like this is one of the major problems with the ethnats is when they talk about like IQ as a proxy for things. So they're like, oh, no, I just really care about IQ. They don't fundamentally care about people who are like lower on the IQ spectrum, who will never be like coders or something. They'll never learn to code. They're never going to do whatever sort of bullshit jobs are going to exist in the future. But like they're very capable of like doing productive labor that would be like dignifying.
I've always had this. Maybe this would be a decent place to drop this. I'll just drop it and run. We can talk about it later if someone gets upset. I've always had this hot take about IQ. Let's just see what you guys think. So the reason, the general two people, especially it's now there's like two groups that really talk about it, and everyone else sort of spectates it, right? It's these, it's sort of a little kind of institutional libs, and then it's these, the science reactionary guys, whatever. Anyways,
HBD.
To me, the whole thing seemed like bullshit because the liberal defense around it is sort of based on the idea that to me the whole thing is malformed because the idea is that this is not true. I think what the liberals are implying is that like everyone has a shot at becoming the American dream still lives. If you be a mechanical engineer, everyone has an equal shot at being a mechanical engineer. If you take this away from us, people will stop believing in liberalism. because that's the only place where the American Dream still is. I don't know. That's a pithy take. We can just drop that there. Let's talk about your book. What's in your
So
book?
my book, it's just a collection. It's a poetry collection. It's mostly organized in like a 4-season structure. So if you read it, like a lot of the poems are like written in those seasons. I think very much in like the seasons, just generally in like the way I don't know. I think it's like an implicit part of. Well, that is particularly because we have very like I grew up with very stark seasonal differences, but I also just think in like general imaginative terms, like it's tied to our conception of time, like seasons of age. People talk about like their winter age or like like middle age as being kind of autumnal, like the spring of youth and these sorts of things, summer romances, etc. All of these are like very much tied, and I don't think they're like. They're arbitrary, but I think that there's like a legitimate like seasonal structure to the imagination. I found this even like as I was just organizing them by the time, like the time that I'd written them, like in the year, they sort of seem to crop up that way anyway. But yeah, so it's a lot of poems. I would say like about 100 or so. I don't know how you'd count them up or divvy them up, I guess, and then some like free floating pieces in there as well. But yeah, it's gonna be a lot of poetry, man. If you want the best poetry book that's probably published in the last 10 years, like I would say so. Not anyone's really trying. I guess if you want to read a free verse kind of nonsense, it's not really that. I used like pretty much every form of poetry that I know how to write. Like it's a lot of sonnets in different various meter forms, a lot of haikus, a lot of stuff like that. I like form, I'm a big formalist.
If I'm reading, so by the way, I'm not from a very poetic. There's not, you don't get really. I don't want to read poetry from somewhere where I'm from, where it's hot as hell, and there's not. I want to read from someone who's been from the cranberry bog.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Well, we don't have the cranberry bogs. I'm from the swamplands, but I think you could have grown cranberries there, but low key, the cranberry industry got kind of moved to the Midwest a while ago.
Son of a bitch. Well, that was used to be what the wasp.
Yeah, they did back in the day, but then they realized that they could grow them out in the Midwest, and they got more space for it. So, it's all gone. Everything, all the northeastern stuff is like it's a shell of itself, man. It makes me depressed when I go back there now. I kind of like having it as a memory instead of seeing its daily reality.
That's what I mean. So I mean, I could bet I could get a pretty cozy poem out of someone that's longing for this
definitely
fall day in New England with sipping some tea. I bet I could get something pretty cozy.
Yeah, there's a lot of cozy ones. There's also some like less cozy ones where it's like I don't know. New England summer is about as bad as like it's like as humid and hot as some parts of the South. So it's very much like that. And like growing up in the swamplands, we are ravaged by mosquitoes and fucking poison ivy and ticks and all these sorts of things. So it's also like kind of a hostile place. There's also like tons of ruins everywhere. Like everything, there's lots of abandoned buildings, lots of abandoned colonial stuff, like buildings that are older than the country. It's like I grew up in one of the oldest places in America, and it's not an experience everyone has, I guess, but it's something that
a peat man in the bog.
About,
they say that the Indians that die in the swamp, they're preserved like forever.
Yeah, they did do that. They did that in Ireland too for a while, way back.
To me, like there's really only like maybe 2 spooky haunted places in America, and that's the Lovecraftian New England thing, and there's St. Augustine, Florida, New Orleans.
Yeah, I was going to say I feel like a lot of it's kind of, I always liked Southern Gothic stuff because it kind of vibed with how I feel about it's like in New England, it's kind of like the same part where it's like there's the death of the aristocracy. Like we're talking about like the disappearance of the wasps fundamentally. That's very much true in the Northeast. Like in the Northeast, like, all these elite schools were about getting kids from the local area and like turning them into like, the leaders of the world. And that's what they used to do up in New England. but now they don't. Like you can't get into it's harder to get into those schools from the same state. They
Yeah, now it's sold off to a Chinese diplomat.
So that's I have a very fond memories of New England, but I don't have much hope for its future, especially the more old school New England stuff is way gone at this point. But so yeah, it's kind of a lot of the same themes that I don't know. People, if you follow my Twitter account, you probably see poems every once in a while that I'll post. But I've been writing poems since I was a young lad, and I like to think I've gotten pretty good at it. So some people agree, some people don't like my poems, but a lot of people do.
I know a lot of people complain about black pills. You dropped some black pills today, but I'm one of the people that annoyed logo is sometimes, I hate to say, some of my favorite logo.
Stuff. What's annoyed logo?
I like it when someone gets when every now and then some people get get up your ass a little bit. You get annoyed to them, and you'll let them have it, man. And I don't ever want to be on the other side of that, man. It's some of your best work comes under fire.
Yeah,
so,
that's definitely true. That's definitely true. I don't know why, but I think I'm just a pretty combative person. I like confrontation, and a lot of the times that's just more of I have a lot of beefs, but most of the time what it is people just someone was today the NRX duck who used to be in a big account in 2014 or whatever has been back on, and he's been talking about the imminent Trump coup, and I was just asking him specific questions about that, and he was just you know what, you're exhausting, and then he blocked me, and it's why are you blocking me? I'm literally just asking you questions. But people block me a lot now, man. Ever since this summer when I was yeah, Maoists aren't going to come to your suburb and kill you. People have been mad, man.
Yeah, this year that's one of the sad things. Discourse is dry. So I took the plunge to before this year. I didn't block anybody, no locking, free talk, everybody. This year there was a moment where you could tell everyone's going out locking their doors, pulling the drapes, and it became you either lock or block everybody. I followed it. Hopefully it'll clear up after the election. I don't know.
I hope so.
My fantasy is that all this bullshit is just to get us make people vote for Joe Biden. It's done. It's not done yet. The party's still going. I don't even comment on it because if you go look at the people talk about it, it's already like a TV show. So there's nothing to say. If you like this, just log on, listen to people. They'll say, I woke up in a cold sweat. I don't know if this guy's going to be in power. It's already a show, so there's nothing to say about it. Just log on and enjoy the show if that's what you're into.
Yeah.
Buy Logo's book.
It's called The Ampersand.
Should be out this weekend.
Ampersand. A lot of poems. Mainline some poems.
Support it. There's a lot of people that aren't right wing at all. They ask me about this, about people like Bronze Age pervert and stuff. And I'll first thing I will tell them is, you're if you're a Twitter person or something, this guy sat down at a computer, started tweeting, and then people in the White House were talking about things he said from a non-account. So if that's not interesting to you, that's a big deal.
Yeah, for sure.
Same for you. Same for you. You're always in the mix. One of the smartest accounts around. I'm sure the book's good. It'll be good to see it.
Thanks, guys.